Rev up your engines! All right, SUVs. Here's one of the first big selling one. It's a Jeep Cherokee. It's 98. The guy got it for nothing from his father, who bought it for only $2,500 years ago from an old guy in a barn. They were simple vehicles. Now, they don't make them like this anymore, mainly because they're kind of gas hoggy, but they can last a long time. Now, to begin with, some of these are really solid built because Fiat hadn't taken over Chrysler. They didn't do that for many years later. They had nothing to do with building these things when this thing was made, and they were actually better made. Fiat started to destroy the company. Now, I got it for free, so you can't look a gift horse in the mouth, but it's only got 133,000 miles on it. Now it's got that 4-liter straight 6-cylinder engine. Now they may be gas hog. This thing gets in the teens in town, realize it's a 4-wheel drive vehicle too, but they can run forever. Now, this was the most traded in vehicle when they had the cash for clunkers in the United States years ago. The Jeep Cherokee line was the #1 vehicle that was traded in to get rid of your gas hogs, and they gave you credit for buying another car. Yeah, it was a stupid thing. It never worked out all that well, because if they gave somebody a $5,000 voucher, the car dealers just jacked the price up $5,000, so you weren't getting any deal. Just like when they said you put in these really good heat pumps on your house instead of using an oil furnace, the government will give you $5,000, $10,000. Well, guess what? All the contractors just raised the price of installing them that much. My son checked it out in Massachusetts, and that's exactly what happened. But these 6-cylinder engines can basically run forever, and they're pretty zippy too. They're not race cars, but they get you down the road. That's how they sold so many of these originally. I mean, let's face it, it's a decent sized SUV. This particular one, 4x4, so you're not going to get stuck anywhere. Here's something you never see anymore. Bench seats! Back when I was young, we used bench seats for all kinds of things. These things were solid made. Families loved buying these things. Yeah, they're big, they're heavy, but they can last a really long time. This baby's got 133,000 miles on it, still running pretty good for him. Now, it did sit in the barn for years. Got so much rust and corrosion because this has still got a cast iron block and it rested sitting there, that he had to bypass the heater core because the car was overheating because the heater core inside there is clogged up. You could replace it. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but this is Tennessee. Put on a hat and gloves when it gets cold. What the heck? Not only that, it's got a cast iron head too. Cast iron is super hard. You can overheat these things. Go into the red, turn them off, wait a few hours, pour some water in the radiator, and away you go, right? These things can take heat. That's why they're pretty much indestructible. Change the oil regularly and don't overheat the engine. If there's a hole in the radiator or something, these engines can last forever. And it has a 4-speed automatic transmission. Warning, warning, only 4 speeds. Certainly nothing like some of the crazy modern ones that have 10-speed automatics. But, of course, that's one of the reasons this gets poor gas mileage. It's only got 4 speeds, right? I mean, it could be worse. It could be a 3-speed. When I was a kid, they had 2-speed slip and slides in some cars. But this 4-speed automatic is relatively simple. They last a really long time. This one still works perfectly fine. 133,000 miles is nothing on one of these things. And if it does break, they are so much easier to repair than the modern ones that are just too complex. There is an advantage to having a simpler system. He's going to change his own oil. He wants to learn to fix his car. Well, look. Oh, 6 spark plugs. Easy to get to. Power steering pump has a little leak. You can easily bolt it off, put another one on. It's got plain old valves. No fancy variable valve timing. He recently had a water pump put on. Ooh, really hard to do, you know, a few bolts on and off it goes. There is an advantage to simplicity. Now, unfortunately, when he got this Jeep from his father for free, he went to Pep Boys and they screwed him over for $9,000 of work. Radiator, water pump, various things, totally overcharged them. And here's the hilarious thing. They replaced the radiator, replaced the water pump 3 times, and finally he said, you need a new motor, we can't fix it, go away. Took it to his neighbor, and his neighbor said, your heater core's clogged, so he just bypassed it. took the hoses off. So now instead of it flowing through the heater core, it flows through the whole engine, and guess what? It stopped overheating. It was just a clogged heater core. These guys charged them $9,000, they didn't even fix it. These are the idiots that work at those places. And I asked him, I said, did you see the older mechanics like me? He said, nah, they were all young kids working on them. And that's what you get. As the saying goes, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And that's what happens. They don't know what they're doing. $9,000 they got out of them. And then they said, oh, well, you need a motor. He doesn't need a motor. There's nothing wrong with these motors, right? I mean, these guys are idiots. They didn't even do any kind of compression test, leak down test to see if the engine actually was bad, because there's nothing wrong with this engine. But they took him for $9,000. Now, he is learning, watching my videos, how to fix these things himself so he doesn't get ripped off. Now we're going to go through the whole thing electronically, of course, but as we look inside, seat covers, they're still in great shape. That's why I say, baby, fabric is the way to go. Fabric lasts. Got a real parking brake. The shifting for the four-wheel drive is a manual lever that is going to brake. 4-speed automatic. The dash is still in good shape. This thing's in immaculate shape. Let's start her up. See what she sounds like. And it's got a key, of course. Sounds just like one of these straight 6-cylinders do. Charging gauge, gas gauge, oil pressure gauge, and a temperature gauge. Everything you want. You don't need anything more. And it's got a couple of buttons for your cruise control, you know. And it's got electric windows. They all still work. Try to start to sag, so they put these cool buttons to hold it up. Smart idea, right? They may be old, but hey, it's OBD too, so here we go. It probably won't auto detect, but you never know. I couldn't read it because it's too old, so I got to type the VIN in. Do standalone diagnosis. You had to type it in. Really old ones, you often have to type them in. These are going to take a while because it's so old. You can see it's at 2%. It'll take a while. So while it's doing it, hey, they had cup holders, and look, that ashtrays. Ooh, evil people used to smoke. Heater doesn't work anymore. It's got a cigarette lighter with this little baby Road Pro. Now it doesn't put out that much heat, but it does a little. It's looking good. It's got no code yet, and it's 29% done. 135,000 miles on it, but it's got no trouble codes at all. Hey, they don't make them like they used to, especially Chrysler before Fiat and then Stellantis took over. Check it out. No trouble codes, 100% done. Look at some live data. We'll go to the ECM. She still gets a lot of data, even though it's old. Camshaft position sensor, that's all good. The synchronization is in sync. Shows the injector pulse width. Short-term fuel trim goes between 0 and 2%. That is phenomenal for an engine this old. It's only adding a tiny amount of fuel to make it run perfectly. Got the coolant temperature, sensor for transmission, voltage 14.1.5, that's going good. Bark advance is good. You still get a lot of information with these things, and you can see everything is black. This thing is in phenomenal shape. Transmission shows it's in excellent shape. Going off. Now, strangely enough, this doesn't have a backup camera, of course. He added this, and there's a backup camera, but he hadn't hooked it up yet, so. Idle smooth. Now here we go to Tobacco Road. Brakes work perfectly fine. These are pretty simple vehicles. They can last a long time. You can have the steering wheel doing its little squeak. They all squeak as the plastic wears out. Who cares? Off Tobacco Road, I can hear a few squeaks here and there. Come to our little drag strip. We're going to stop, and then we're going to take off and see what this thing has. Okay, here we go. Hey, it threw me back in the scene a little. These 6-cylinder engines have plenty of torque. Gotta say, this thing is in immaculate shape. Now, I did get it for nothing, but he should have never put all those thousands in at the Pep Boys, who totally ripped them off, telling them, oh, well, no, you need an engine after charging them all that money. And then it was just a clogged heater core. So stay away from places that have young kids that don't know what they're doing and just keep charging you money and then say, oh, throw my hands up in the air. I don't know what's wrong with it. Oh, you need an engine. There's nothing wrong with this engine. It's in excellent shape. My computer showed that. It's running almost perfectly. Hey, this thing still takes off fine. Shifts smooth. It's got many years left in it. He did get ripped off at Pep Boy big time, but the vehicle itself is in excellent shape. These 6-cylinder engines can run forever. And the simple 4-speed automatic transmissions can last almost as long with very little maintenance. Just change the filter and fluid every 50,000 miles or so, right? Now you might think, okay, how come Jeep makes junk today and they used to make good stuff? Because Fiat bought them and their quality went down the toilet. This was made in the United States, was solid built, and it's still an extremely solid vehicle. And the plus is you can also put it in four-wheel drive when it snows if you have to. So, hey, he got it for nothing. He put too much money in it. Now he's learning how to fix it himself. And now he doesn't have to throw all that money in it. And he can keep it rolling down the road because there's nothing wrong with the engine. There's nothing wrong with the transmission. The body's still in excellent shape. And towed by the other owner behind an RV, he's going to leave the tow bar on because the girl's getting his only 16. And he figures, hey, a little bit more safety. With people driving like the guy who just went by, hey, I'd leave it on too. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.